could you please give us some context on what's happening in Bangladesh?
Sure.
And the second question is that, is it in any way linked to what we're seeing happening in the Gulf, in Israel, Palestine? Is it in any way linked to what's happening in Ukraine? Is it in any way linked to what's happening in America? Because Sheikh Hasina said something pretty controversial this past week. So, Sarjan Shah, over to you. Give us the story.
Look, in many ways, what's happened is not surprising. And so before I address Sheikh Hasina's specific comments, I guess I would point to the general failure of the decolonization movement all over the world by pointing to India as the rare success story.
The decolonization movement, as in post World War II.
Post World War II, as a number of Asian, African nations were driving towards independence, you effectively had the birth of a number of nations that were under-equipped, under-resourced, and had a set of systemic structural challenges that most democratic experiments have largely failed to address, which is why I point to India as the sort of powerful exception to the rule, where given the opening circumstances that we had, a large, fairly uneducated and poor population that had very little experience with democracy, relatively low governmental effectiveness as well back in 1947. I mean, we were just a poor country, not much by way of natural advantages in this process of nation building or this project of nation building. Now, the reason I give you the example of India as the exception that proves the rule is that the fact that we've managed to sustain democracy for 75 plus years, and the fact that we've managed to, through our own ups and downs, managed to build a relatively prosperous nation today, with, of course, continuing issues, social, economic, political, etc. But overall, I think that we believe that we're a success story. But you look around yourself, right? I mean, look at just the rest of the subcontinent. Look at just what the British left behind. And you have Pakistan on one side, you have Bangladesh on the other, and you have Sri Lanka to the south of you. All these three, outside of the specifics, are examples of nations that have effectively failed to build up the necessary national power and national capacity over the last 60 or 70 years to be able to continue to have sustainable democracy. Just a quick history of Bangladesh for the context of what's going on right now. Obviously, most of your viewers will be aware that thanks to Indian support and intervention, Bangladesh was birthed in 1971 as a very unique and powerful example of humanitarian intervention, because India went in, ended the genocide being committed by the West Pakistani army, but then quickly within 3 months of the Pakistani surrender also withdrew, which allowed Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, Sheikh Hasina's father, to very quickly establish a modicum of governance in erstwhile East Pakistan. So they managed to establish a constitution within a year, and he really tried to usher in a secular form of government into what was otherwise, really as a vestige of partition, meant to have an Islamic identity in East Pakistan. If you consider the fact that the father of the nation, just like in India's case, was assassinated shortly after independence in 1975, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was assassinated in a coup, and in a military coup. And the reason I draw this is just think in the back of your mind about the parallels with Pakistan, right? Country is born, few years of so-called democratic or civilian rule, and almost immediately you have a military coup. Mujibur Rahman and the vast majority of his family are murdered, and you have a number of years of really a authoritarian form of army-led rule. After which you have a return to democracy a number of years later, and then Sheikh Hasina, as one of Sheikh Mujib's sort of surviving daughters, comes back, becomes prime minister, and she's really had more or less control of Bangladesh for the last 15 odd years before these recent events. But the point I'm really trying to make is, you never had in Bangladesh the level of economic development, the level of social integration, the level of, the development of institutional strength to be able to sustain this. And so the fact that you're seeing mass protests in the here and now, yes, there could be proximate causes, which are driven by animus from other countries. But for the most part, I would point to the long duration of her rule, the jailing of political opponents, the feeling in Bangladesh that the voices of the opposition are really not being heard, and real frustration at the level of the civilians at their day-to-day lives, which I think is or should be unsurprising, given their socioeconomic situation.
Hey, if you enjoyed today's clip, make sure you check out all the other clips we've uploaded on this channel. You'll find a clip related to almost every single topic as long as you're willing to search for it.